What is up, good people? Welcome back to the video version of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show where we talk about, guitars and pedals and amps and life. Whatever comes up. This week I am talking to Shermy Freeman from the Surfrajettes. She is a fantastic guest, and we had way more in common than I ever would have expected, actually. She is awesome, her band is awesome, and she has great taste in gear, and without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. Let's go! Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, a show about guitar stuff, occasionally, sometimes. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Shermy from the Surfrajettes. What's happening?
Hello, I'm just coming in here from Ontario in Canada. It's very cold already.
Yes, of course it is. Yes. Well, I think I first found you and your music through a couple of different places, kind of all at the same time several years ago. I used to do some work with SolidgoldFx back in the day. Greg is a good buddy, so I remember him like sharing some of your stuff, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then Ryan Burke from 60 Cycle Hum would, So it was like, "Oh man, this is great." But I took forever to actually reach out because I'm just always sidetracked with all kinds of other stuff. But I wanted to get you on the show to get your story, because I think you guys hold a pretty unique place in this day and age with not just the style of music you're playing, but like you really lean into the aesthetics of everything too, which I think is super cool. And I just wanted to get your whole story. Like, I'm kind of fascinated with the Shermy story. So like, when did you start playing and where did all this inspiration come from?
I started playing the guitar when I was like 15, and I was in high school, and like all my guy friends played the guitar, and I think I just felt left out, honestly. I played a bunch of other instruments at school. Like I was in concert band and jazz band and that stuff. I played clarinet first, and then I played the trumpet. I dicked around on the piano a bit. But when all my like cool friends started playing the guitar, I was like, oh, I want to do that too. So
Sure.
my mom had like a classical guitar in the basement. So I just started like teaching myself how to play on that. And then I think I'm trying to remember, like, I remember I started playing, in like we had a lot of guitar related groups at the school I was at. Where I live, and there was like an acoustic ensemble, and then there was also like a rock band and a blues band, so you could audition to be in like one of those bands. And it was like, I don't know, like I think the rock band was like a seven piece band, and like I sucked, but the teacher, I think, he wanted to diversify and give opportunities to not just the boys, so I did like try really hard. And when I was in grade 12, I auditioned for the rock band, and I was in the rock band. And Nicole, my other guitar player in the Surfrajettes, she went to the same school, and she was 2 years behind me. But I was the first female player in the rock band, and she was the first female player in the blues band on guitar.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we have like a similar story in that way, and that's like what we like connected on at school when we met. But we weren't like, to say we were acquaintances. Like we weren't like friends. We were 2 years apart. We knew each other, but we weren't, yeah. So anyways, I remember I did not have any of the prerequisites to take guitar class in high school. So when I got to grade 12, I wanted to take guitar class, and they told me, oh, you have to start in the 9th grade. And I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. So they were like, all right, fine. They made an exception, and they let me do the grade 12 class as long as I, was able to keep up with the pace of it. And I don't know, I transitioned fine into that class, and I did really well. So that was like the last formal training I had was grade 12 guitar class, but it was good, to learn that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not a real technical learner. I'm more of like, I definitely learn by ear. I was used to playing instruments that required reading music, but I kind of threw that all out the window when I I got to the guitar. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I
so that's kind of how
understand
I
that.
got started. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally relate to that. I started on piano myself, and it was a big focus on reading music, and I found punk rock and all this other stuff, and was like, I can do power chords. I don't
Yeah.
need any of that stuff.
Well, now I'm kicking myself, and I'm like,
A
damn
hundred
it, I
percent.
just started. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what was your first band kind of separate from school activities?
Well, the Surfrajettes. I wasn't in a
Oh wow.
band like other than being in high school bands and being in the rock band at the high school. I wasn't in another band until the Surfrajettes. I didn't play guitar for like 9 years.
Oh whoa.
Yeah, I
Whoa.
just played for a couple years in high school, and then I just went out and did life and got a job, and I didn't go to any post-secondary education or anything. I just went into the workforce, and I just was like, well, this is my life now, and I didn't touch a guitar bass hardly at all for 9 years.
What drew you back in?
I think it was like 8 or 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was in a life that I started realizing that even though I'd found like new parts of my individuality, I think I realized I left a lot of parts behind. And I think I was in a really huge rut. I must have been like 26 or 27. And I remember the guitar really, helping me remember like things that made me happy at a simpler time in my life. And I think it kind of like pulled me out of it's kind of ironic because it pulled me out of a rut, but it threw me into a life of like uncertainty and chaos. Which I always think it's ironic that the reason why we started playing, and I think everyone who was in the band, the first lineup of the Surfrajettes, I think we all kind of agreed like, oh, this would be a nice way to get away from our troubles and have like a fun thing to do together. And then it ended up very immediately being like very high pressure and very busy. But that's
Did you
how
have
all the
a
things.
Did you have a lot of attention really quickly? Is why the pressure came on, or why did you guys feel that way?
Well, I never had like a clear direction for the band whatsoever. It was honestly just to have fun, and I'd fallen in love with the surf scene in Toronto, and we used to go to like the Great Lakes Surf Battle and go to surf shows there, and I thought it was so fun and so cool. And then when I was talking about, oh, I'm starting a surf band, I think we had a gig booked before we had a bass player or a drummer. So we
Oh
very
wow.
quickly had to like find players. And if you want a challenge, start a girl band and try to find people. And especially when you live in like a rural community, like obviously we could drive to Toronto, but it was very hard to find people to be in the band at first,
Sure.
especially when we had 3 months before our first show. So yeah, it was like we kind of just like cobbled this together. And then, but when we showed up, we played our first show at Cherry Cola's in Toronto, and I remember showing up for our show, and I'd been to that bar many times for shows, but I'm not like tooting my own horn. I'm just saying I had never seen it that packed as for our first show. And I think it just piqued people's curiosity so much. Like, I think that people are used to seeing, this type of music being played predominantly by men, and instruments played in these ways predominantly by men. So I think it just was like people were very curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you guys have was it the draw from just like the local scene? Was there a lot of immediate online attention, some combination of both, or what? Like somehow the word had to get out.
Yeah, I think like we'd made an Instagram, and it's not like it had like a ton of followers or anything, but yeah, I'd say when we first started, we were definitely surprised at how like quickly like the numbers were going up, and then we started posting videos. Like I remember it was a different time where the algorithm is concerned. Okay, like I know a lot of people are complaining about the algorithm and stuff lately, and like don't worry, everyone's feeling the effect of that. But at the time, I think it was really crazy to see like how our videos were being viewed, and then all of a sudden it would like we'd have it posted for a couple weeks, but all of a sudden it would like go viral in Greece or something, or Mexico City. Like it would just show where the videos were being viewed, and we're like, wow, people are watching our videos and this far away. So I think we're really lucky that we hit the internet at a really good time, and we were doing something. I think it's not like we're the first band of women to do what we're doing. I can't think of like that many other examples, but I think it was new on social media at the time. Like it's like when we had our viral video with Toxic. I feel like the band has improved a ton since we did that video, but there's something about that video that we'll never be able to recreate because it's not new anymore. And I think when people saw that video, they were like, wow, what is this thing I've never seen before? So I always look at that as like, I'm not trying to recreate that, or I don't think it's something that can be recreated, but I am grateful for it and realize that I am able to do what we do because of this time in our band's career, you know?
Yeah, 100%. I feel a little bit of that myself. I was actually a very similar age to yourself when I was feeling listless and just like, I don't want to be doing this. I want to be doing guitar things and, watching people do demos and do online content. And I was like, well, I'm sure I can do some version of that. I don't know what. And that's about the time I started the podcast. And I never think it's too late for anybody to start trying to make content or trying to do anything at all. But definitely the things that worked back then don't necessarily, they're not going to be, it's not that they won't work now. It's just that they're not going to be the slam dunk that they were back then.
It's kind of it can be discouraging now. Like, no offense to TikTokers. I wish I was on TikTok more, like, and could get that to work. But, it's like, I almost feel like there's I don't know, like a vibe to videos now where it's like, it's the ones that are viral are just so, 1 second things of someone doing something silly. And, I'm like, I can't compete with this. This isn't what I do. Right. Like I don't want to get into that, that mindset where I'm just making content because I want it to go viral,
Well, yeah. And I was talking with a friend of mine who's in a different space, but, he got started even prior to this. He started like writing blogs and stuff in like 2006 or 5 or something. And he's kind of kept up with the evolution of content online, of course. And he's also talking to people about these topics. And he's like, well, what kind of audience are you trying to bring in? Are you trying to bring in somebody that only wants you for your 1 second eating a hamburger video and then never engages with you otherwise? What does that really do for you? The answer is not a lot, unless your entire goal is just to get as many views as possible and maybe a brand deal or something. But I think that's a little bit short-sighted, especially for creatives and artists, really. Do you need to focus on some of it? Sure, but I think focusing on the type of person you're trying to attract is almost more important than the amount.
Yeah, like I remember once we had a viral video on Instagram. Like we've had a couple, and one of them in particular was just an ad I made for a show. Like I always try to make a post for the show we're having that night on tour or whatever. And it ended up going viral in like South Asia. And we got like so many followers from it. And it was like, wow, this is, but then you realize like, well, those people can't come to a show, right. Like they can't buy it. They don't live here. So it's as great as it, some of these things look on paper or numbers look on the screen. You always have to be like, who am I really trying to reach? People who can come to the shows, people that would be interested in the music, who'd want to buy the record. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I've stopped focusing so much on the numbers because it's not always going to pay off in the way that you think it is.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm just
100%.
trying to focus on the people who I know are going to be able to, participate.
Yeah. And furthermore, who actively want to, if you put out a bunch of content that doesn't have anything to do with what you're actually doing, and you get a bunch of people. I mean, and same, I've followed people because I thought it was one thing and ended up being another. And it's like, oh, well, why would, that's not to say you shouldn't make whatever you want to make or feel inspired to make in that moment, but it does, it's that chasing the dragon type of thing, just constantly trying to figure out what the next thing is for the sake of the view, when the view doesn't necessarily translate into anything for you other than a view. And I'm thankful for any microsecond of attention that I could get, because that's what pays the bills in this economy. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of us can be guilty of being a bit short-sighted with that. So I think it's good that you're paying attention to it, because it can be a distraction from the real thing. For sure.
Yeah.
So segueing a little bit, I know we could probably talk about algorithms all day, but that's kind of boring. So the guitar stuff. So when you got back into the guitar, what was that first instrument that you kind of picked up and were like, hey, I'm feeling this again?
Well, before I stopped playing, I was playing a Gibson SG. So that's what I picked up again when I started playing again. And I had like this solid state Marshall amp that I'd use because I was like in a classic rock band in high school. So I think like the last song I played in high school was like Carry On My Wayward Son or something like that. Like
Of course, yeah.
And I love AC/DC, so I'm like a huge Angus Young fan. So when I graduated high school, my dad bought me an SG. And so yeah, it's like I felt like kind of guilty because I didn't really play after high school. But my dad actually said to me once, he's like, I have a feeling you're going to come back to music. And I'm like, don't hold your breath. And then look what happens, you know?
Right.
So I started playing the SG again. And but then I wanted to start a surf band. So I started looking into like what's a surfy type of guitar. And I ended up getting a 67 Harmony Bobcat.
So sick.
And I just bought it online. And actually, do you know... Michael Pusheen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, I asked him once, like, what is Pusheen? And he's like, it's the sound of a sword coming out of a sheath. So I'm like, Pusheen. Michael Adams. So I didn't know him at all, but I was looking on like hashtags of Bobcats, and I found that he'd like had some at M&M Guitar Bar, or he'd worked on some there. So I just cold messaged him, and I'm like, help me. Should I buy this off the internet? It was like, I don't know, like silvertones.com or something. And I ended up buying this Bobcat on the internet, and it was blue, which is called a color cat with a K. It's like the color cat line. And blue ones are kind of rare. So I ended up playing that for the first part of the Surfrajettes. Like that's what my surf guitar was. And actually this tone of that guitar was really cool. And I miss it. I don't miss its neck. Like it was such a thick neck. Like I realized I could play a lot better than I thought I could when I switched to like a smaller neck. But I do appreciate that guitar. You know, just that it had it had like that floating bridge, that floating wooden bridge, and it's like you can't intonate it properly. It's like I watched, honestly, there's a video from the first Surfrajette show, and like I'm not like, oh, it sucked. I mean, we've come a long way, and I can appreciate the beginnings of things, you know, but my intonation sucked. I will say that. And there's one song where I'm just like, it's so cringy because I didn't know anything about intonation and the bridge and shit at that time. I was really, really green and learning about all that stuff. So
yeah.
Anyways,
you live and you learn. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Bobcat was the first for the surfy stuff. And then what was the rig like at the time?
I'm trying to... Okay, so like our first show would have been... I think I was using the SolidgoldFx Surfrider 3.
Okay.
Reverb pedal. And Nicole and I had gone and bought Pawn Shop Series Fender Excelsiors. Matching blue Tolex. We'd found they were like discontinued at this point, but we'd found locally like two that people still had in the store. So we bought those. And I think I was just using, oh my gosh, I think back to these days though. And I just remember like, I remember at one show, Nicole and I shared a daisy chain.
Oh, whoa. Hey, whatever works.
And I remember just like, obviously I'm far more, invested these days and learning technical things, but I just think about some of the things that we did, and it's like, it's endearing. I'll say it's probably endearing, but man, didn't really know a lot about ground issues and things like that. But so anyways, yeah, I think I was just using the Surfrider 3. That's what I think I was, but I know I went to Las Vegas at some point on a trip, and I went into Cowtown Guitars and I bought an actual reverb unit at Cowtown. Around that time, I got it. Yeah, the guy that's on TV, I can't remember his name. The guy that's on like the
on Pawn Stars.
Pawn Stars. Yeah, the guy who comes and does the appraisals. He was there.
Jesse.
Jesse, yeah. But I didn't meet him, but he was in the back, and the guy that worked there went and asked him, and it was like expensive at the time. It's not expensive now, but he offered to like absorb the exchange rate because our Canadian dollars is worth. It's awful. So he was really nice and like absorbed the exchange rate. So I did buy it, and I took it home on the plane as my carry-on. So I had a real reverb unit, which I did use live for a while.
And it was honestly, a Fender one?
Yep, it was I think it's a 65 black bass. Yeah. So I still have it, and I use it for recording and things like that. Like we just used it when we recorded our new record. We used it for the crashes and all that stuff. But something I think I started realizing is, we started playing festivals with a bunch of other surf bands, and, you would go to the festival and a lot of them would just have backline sitting on the stage. So you just go plug into the exact same rig as the last guy was playing. And honestly, I just don't find that, I don't care if people get mad at me, but I don't find that tonally that interesting. Like changing a guitar is going to change your tone to a point. But if everybody is using the same amps in the same tank all day long, like there's just something about that like tonal redundance that I'm just like, hey, maybe you can be a surf band but not use the exact same thing as everyone else.
Well, also if you're a surf band in like a surf festival and everybody's got the same backline, the guitars are likely to be pretty similar as well, even if you are swapping them out. So,
and that's kind of what I started learning as well. I did so the Bobcat was definitely just like, I was realizing I needed to upgrade to a better guitar. Like we were traveling on planes at this point as well. Like we started getting like festival offers, and I'm like, I can't take this thing on an airplane. The case is like literally falling apart. Like I needed to,
yes.
It's like don't pick it up by the handle, So I actually bought a Squier Jaguar, like a vintage modified. I think that's what it was called, and I bought it from some really sketchy deal off Facebook Marketplace in Toronto, actually. And I did go in some guy's basement to get it, and I survived. But
I'm glad you're still with us.
Yeah, it was really cheap, and I ended up like stripping the whole thing. I ripped out all of the wiring. My dad's friend from when we were kids, my dad played hockey, and one of his hockey friends was a Corvette specialist who like redid Corvettes, and he's a really good painter. He was like an award-winning like hot rod painter. So I'd seen him a few times, and he's like, I'd love to paint a guitar for you. So he painted my Jaguar, which was my Shermy Jaguar. It was like a blue sparkle. It was actually a Squier, a vintage modified Jaguar. But yeah, I like matching headstock, blue sparkle body. And then I got Curtis Novak gold foil mustache, like the mustache pickups, because I wanted it to be like the Bobcat. In my mind, I was like, I want it to be like the Bobcat. I liked the tone that I got from it at that time. So anyways, I played this Jaguar for a few years, and then it was so heavy, like it actually started like really bugging my shoulder. Like it was, so then I took it to Alistair Miller, who's a luthier in Toronto. He's actually the one that put the guitar together for me as well. Like after I ripped all apart, I got it painted. Like he put all new wiring, electronics, like upgraded. Because, you know, like, let's be real. Like, when you rip apart a Squire, sometimes you're not overly impressed with what's inside. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, oh, wow, this is a beetle soldered to another, it just, yeah. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah, so it was good to just upgrade all of the... But then as far as, like, the body goes and all that stuff, it was great. Like, the neck, I really liked the neck. It was so heavy. So I had it actually drilled out. I was like, what do I have to lose? So we took the pick guard off, and we just, like, drilled a whole bunch of holes in it to try to make it lighter. And I'll be honest, I didn't love it after that. Like, it didn't do what I'd hoped it did. It made it lighter, but it did take out some of the low end. Like, I just feel like it didn't sound bad, and I still used it, but I was like, this might not have been the best
right choice
thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, it was trying to save something I really like worked hard on, and I still wanted to use, but it just, yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. So from there, I got talking to Vanessa Wheeler. Have you talked to Vanessa Wheeler before?
I have not, but I do know who she is.
Yeah. She, I remember posting, like, on Instagram or something, like, oh, I'm thinking of building another guitar. What should I do? And, a lot of people were like, Mustang, or do another Jaguar, or whatever. And I was considering it, and I wanted to find maybe something vintage that was lighter. But Vanessa was like, oh, you should get a Creston Creature. And so from Creston Guitars in Vermont. And I'm thinking, I'm broke as like, that's not going to happen. So, but hey. So am I allowed to swear on this podcast? I don't know. Sorry.
It's already been happening. So
okay. Sorry. Should I not? I don't know.
You're good.
Okay. So I emailed Creston and just being like, hey, like, I don't even remember. I just asked him, like, do you have any parts I could buy or something? And he was just like, no, because it's like custom. Like, I don't really do that. And I'm like, fair. It was a long shot. But then him and I got talking, and he seemed really interesting in making it happen, like, regardless of, what I could afford at the time. So we did end up working something out, and he was really, really, really great to work with. And I ended up getting my first Creston Creature, which was the seafoam green sparkle. And then again, I wanted it to be like my Bobcat. So we put another set of Curtis Novak gold foils in it. But they were like I think it was like, we went with like Guiatone wined ones instead of Diarmond this time. Mm-hmm. Is this like too nerdy? I don't know.
No, this is perfect.
What I'm supposed to be doing.
No, this is perfect. Yeah, perfect.
So we went with the Guiatone because they have like more of a bell tone, which is more Fendery. So I love that guitar. It changed my whole perception of what I wanted in a guitar, what I needed in a guitar. Like I'd always thought like my dream was to have like a vintage Jaguar. But after I got this Creston Creature, I was like, I don't want anything but this guitar ever again. And I mean, it can be tricky when like people want to sponsor you and shit like that. Like, like we use Fender amps and all that stuff, but I have to be honest with them and say like, this is the guitar I'm supposed to be using. Like the Creston Creature is the guitar that I'm supposed to be using.
100%.
So anyways, I use that one. And then I started to realize that I needed something clearer, like with the reverb. And, Nicole plays a Strat, which has a very distinct tone, and it cuts really well. Even on the neck pickups, like I still was feeling like she was overpowering me, not on purpose, just by virtue of like our two instruments. And we do a lot of trading with like rhythm and lead. So I was feeling like my low end was getting kind of lost. And then I was suggested to try Dynasonic pickups. Sorry, I'm just like getting ahead of myself and being like,
you're good.
Is that right? Yeah. Dynasonic, a friend suggested, I think that Dynasonic pickups would be perfect for you. And they were. So I got another Creston Creature, and he put Dynasonics. I think they're Mojo ones, and my pink one. So the next one was pink. And they definitely did the trick. Like it was just slightly more of a clear tone, and then it had like the low end that I was kind of like yearning for.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up getting another Creston creature. I am, I guess I'm a spokes player for Creston.
Or a creature of habit, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So I scream his name from every mountaintop, but I got Dynasonics in it's the gold one that was my most recent one, and we got TV Jones Dynasonic pickups and put them in that. And honestly, I'll say out of all three of them, the gold one is my favorite to play live. It's like got tonally, it's like perfect. And it's got like the low end that I had been yearning for without turning up louder. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what people joke sometimes. They're like, oh, it must be really hard to be in a girl band. Everyone's so dramatic. And I'm like, honestly, it's great because we're not trying to drown each other out all the time. It's like we'll like talk and be like, oh wow, so like my low end's not cutting through. How can we solve this versus everyone turning up louder? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up being was I needed to change pickups. So I had more low end, so I wasn't like, because then your high notes are all super super loud, but just to be able to get your low end right.
Yeah,
that makes any sense. I could just be rambling.
No, it does, because like if you're cranking your amp up, you're going to perceive the low end as being more there, and in some amps it actually is, depending on how it works, right?
Sure.
But if you're trying to get that same vibe and sound at a lower volume, then it has to start with the guitar. So I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, and like we'd been using the Fender Excelsior amps for years, and then Fender did send us 2 of the Pro Reverb amps, and that really helped as well, because as much as I love the Excelsiors, they have no tonal control, like 0.
Yeah.
It's on and off, and then there's a reverb switch. Or no, there's tremolo on those. So having like the Pro Reverbs has helped a lot in just being able to actually control the output more. And yeah, we've just had more live experience, and playing around with different pedals and stuff like that. It's definitely made a difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you guys we've talked a lot about the live experience, which is obviously very important, but when you guys are recording, do you use the same stuff, or do you try to explore and play with different things?
Generally, we use the same stuff. Like, honestly, I think that our goal is always to sound as much as the same as possible live and on the recordings. Like, we want the experience to be the same, because when we record, we do a lot of just live off the floor. It's we want what we record in the studio to be attainable live. And so, but yeah, like, I mean, our producer, he has like a ton of vintage gear and all this and goodies like that. So there has been things he's brought in to, like maybe like a different amp on a couple of songs if he noticed something wasn't cutting through or whatever, or someone's guitar was acting up, so he brought in a vintage Strat to use or something like that. Mm-hmm. But generally, we use the same stuff.
Cool. Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask you, you already kind of explained this, but I'm curious if you've ever explored the more digital realm that's getting so popular now with the Quad Cortex and the Helix and all that stuff, especially if you're going international. Have you messed with any of that stuff?
Well, it's funny because like it doesn't interest me at all. Like, it just doesn't. I mean, I'm like, my house is all vintage. Like, I don't even like I like TV, but I hate having a visible TV in my house, So there's something about digital that just like I don't want to be like a snob about it or anything like that. I'm sure it's great, and I'm sure it is going to be the future, but I'm just not ready. I'll carry around my tube amp while I still can, but I will say I've used it once because we played a couple of songs with LA Guns at a show, like at an LA Guns show.
Nice.
We played, but we used their rigs. And I think at the time Tracy was using I don't know if he's using it now, but he was at the time on a digital kick, and I did use his digital rig. So I've used it one time.
One time. Wasn't enough to stick, though.
Well, no. And I'm just like a creature of habit. And I mean, I also, it's like, I've worked with SolidgoldFx now, and like I have my own, like the signature model of the Surfrider 4 pedal, because I think I've just been so loyal to that pedal. I remember buying it when I was just getting into playing surf music, and I was still using my Marshall amp with like the built-in digital reverb, and it just wasn't cutting it. So I remember driving like really far away, and I have like a vintage car. It's not running right now, but it's like a 66 Dodge Dart, and I used to be
sick.
And I used to be like, I don't want to say like irresponsible, because it wasn't like I was like, oh, this pedal, it's 3 hours away. Sure, I'll just jump in my unreliable car and drive there. And I remember breaking down on the off ramp it was a place called Oakville, Ontario, where the pedal was at a store. And I broke down on the off ramp, and I got the car going, and I got to the store, bought the pedal, and the guy that owned the store had to get me water to put in my radiator. So I could make it home. So
it's such a guitar player thing too.
Yeah.
Like we'll load, what's the classic meme that's gone around? Like we'll load, $5,000 worth of gear in a $2,000 car to go to play $100 gig. Like,
my friend just sent me that meme this morning. That's so funny. Yeah.
So true.
So that's when I got the Surfrider 3, but then I just, a lot of people asked me, and the person who told me to get that pedal was actually from Ohio, which is funny because the pedal is Canadian, but Tones Chaser, Eric Coleman. You must have heard of, do you know Eric Coleman?
Yeah, I've been following him for a long time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he was really helpful when I started playing as well. He was like, you should get the Surfrider pedal, it's really good. So I did, and I drove far away in my car. Well, it's not, but my unreliable vehicle to go and get it. But then people kept asking me about it online, and that's when I started posting guitar videos. And so SolidgoldFx like saw, like people are really responding to the pedal because she's using it. And then over the years, it's just like, oh, maybe one day we could do like a Shermy model. And then they brought out the Surfrider 4, and I did not want to change. Like I loved my tone. I was just like, no. And they were like, well, you're gonna have to, like, if we want to do this collaboration. And I'm just like, well, I'm really happy with how this sounds. Like, I don't think I want to change. But then this January, when we were recording the record, they sent me one, and I did change, and it is way better.
Yeah.
I just was being, like, I just don't like change in my tone. I like to be the same all the time. And so anyways, I tried it, I liked it, and then we did a signature model of it, and it went over really, really well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, back in the day, one of my first pedals, and I've got way too many pedals now, but one of my very first pedals and my first delay pedal ever was actually the Electroman.
Oh, cool.
And ended up working with Greg for several years, doing a bunch of different things. We did a couple, well, we did like 3 or 4 collabs together on a fuzz pedal, and that was really cool. It was like one of my first, it was my first, I think, pedal collab that I ever did, was with Greg. So yeah, I have a lot of love for Greg and the Solid Gold family. They make great stuff, and I feel like it's always been a lot. You know how like you hear about a lot of things all the time, right? There's some things that are just always in your feed or people are always talking about. And Solid Gold, I'm always like, yeah, but they do something like that, but it's better. And it should be talked about more. That's how I've always felt about them. They always need talked about more.
Same. Yeah. Like my whole board is SolidgoldFx, and how that ended up happening is when I don't know, I guess I'd been in the surf, it's probably like 2018, let's say. I'd been in the Surfrajettes for a few years, and I got this other gig playing with this Canadian pop star named Fifi Dobson.
Cool.
And she wanted to have a all female band, and I'll be honest, it was like I was in way over my head. Like I like one of her songs had an Orianthi solo on it, and I was just like, oh no. But she's like, no, I'm in like a different. She's like, she was going more in like a Lana Del Rey direction at the time, like more like 60s surfy, and then like Nancy Sinatra. They were like the set had like a couple Nancy Sinatra songs in it and stuff. So I was like, all right, well, I mean, I'll audition. So I auditioned, and they were like, yeah, you're perfect. And they were like, but you have to play all of my older songs as well, which were like the rock anthem type. I did not play the Orianthi solo. I will just come out and say that. But I didn't want to butcher someone's great work. But yeah, I had none of the pedals I needed to do these songs. Like there was like, fuzz and I had some things, but I needed like compression, and from that I was just using a reverb pedal. That was it. I didn't have anything. So I called Greg and told him what was happening, and he was nice enough to like, honestly, he really, really helped me out, and he helped me get like an entire boards full of the stuff I needed, and a friend helped me like route it, and my dad actually ended up making me a pedal board. I like fit in a suitcase, and I don't know if you've seen my fold up one.
Yes.
Did you ever see my fold up one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, since that, I've upgraded some of, or like just got different versions of the pedals, because Greg has updated a lot of the ones that I had previously been using. But yeah, my dad made me a new pedal board, and it was like long, and I told him it had to fit in my duffel bag to go as my carry-on, and I felt like such a brat, like calling my dad and being like, but I love this pedal board you made me, but it's too big and it won't not fit in the duffel bag. So he was just like, ugh, okay. So he took it and he just cut it in half and put hinges on it, and then put a handle on it, and it folds in half and has a handle. And then I posted it, and people like went crazy over this, small footprint pedal board that my dad did.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. It wouldn't fit in my duffel bag. And then a whole bunch of people like wanted one. He has made a couple of them for other people. So, I mean, he could go into the pedal board making business, I guess, if he wanted to.
I have a couple of friends on that business. It can be a bit rough. But it's so cool that people respond
trying to get musicians to pay for things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the hardest things. That's one of the hardest things there is to do, right? So since you guys have started, obviously you talked about, you had the big break. I'm taking some steps back, but since you brought up your dad, I just wanted to ask, like, what was your family's reaction when you were like, hey, I'm going to do this now? Like, were they supportive? Were they a bit hesitant, or how did that go?
Well, I actually worked for my dad's business when I started the band, and I think they were just kind of used to it being I don't know if anyone ever thought it would be like a possibility in the sense of like quitting my job, but luckily my dad was selling his company, at a certain point. So yeah, he'd been like trying to help me make it happen, like giving me the time off after work and stuff I needed to like make it to gigs in the city and things like that. And then by the time like I wasn't working for him anymore, and I just got like a job just so I could do the band. And then the boss at my new job was actually a drummer, and it was just like a service, food service place. And I ended up managing the shop, and he just loved that I was in a band, and he was like a huge fan of the band. So he literally let me do whatever I wanted.
Nice.
And I mean, I have to say, Nicole and I both had very understanding employment situations that allowed us to, do what we needed to do before we went in the band full time. So like, I'll always be grateful to, our employers for being so patient with, what we needed to do to get to the place that we are. Because most people don't have that. Like, most people don't have that at all. So, no, my parents are like really proud. I mean, it is a weird life. And I'll say, like, yeah, like the uncertainty of it can definitely be a challenge. And you're always like working in the future. Like you can't just like sit back and be like, oh, well, I'm good now. You know, we did this
Right.
thing. It's like, oh no, we did that thing. And now we have to be thinking about the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So yeah, I don't think anyone ever thought that this is what I would be doing, but here I am.
Yeah. Hey, that's another thing I can relate to. It's not, it's probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's probably somewhat similar in that looking from now backwards, it seems obvious. It's like, well, of course you were going to end up doing something like that. But, you know, when you're in the middle of trying to figure things out in your 20s and whatever, everything's like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. I want to do this thing. I want to do that thing. I want to do, you know, but everyone's telling you, no, you got to do this. And it can feel a bit murky, but then you know, hindsight being 2020, it all makes sense, right?
Well, yeah, and I think it's kind of worked out for me in a sense that, you know, I always worked in like blue collar jobs. Like that's what I did. Like people don't normally believe me when I tell them like what I used to do. I was definitely working in like in the mechanics field, like blue collar industry, all that stuff. Until I was like 26 or 27, and then then I went to my service job. And but one of my friends who went to school for advertising, he always said to me, he's like, I really believe like your actual skills are in like advertising and marketing, like your visual skills and photography and video and all that kind of stuff. Like I think you'd be really good at, I think you would have done really well in the advertising world. But then I'm like, now that I'm running the band and we pretty much do everything ourselves, it's like, oh, that is one of my skills and I'm doing it in the band. So really the band is like, it's barely playing music. Okay, let's just say that. Like you write your songs, you make your album. That's not a lot of your time, right?
Right.
Like that's
right.
not. What our time is put towards is like Nicole's the tour manager. I'm the marketer. We both write the songs. And like our drummer Annie, like she does a lot now too, but it's like it's to do with like administration and things like that. So some bands will have like managers that do all this stuff, but let's be real, in this day and age, I don't know anyone that can do that. I don't know how, when I hear people who have like a lot of outside support with like managers and things like that, I'm like, I don't know how that works, because we have to do so much ourselves to, you know, be financially viable. So yeah. So
No,
yeah, we
I'm
do
really...
a lot ourselves, but sorry,
go ahead. Sorry. No, you go ahead. Sorry.
I'm saying that I do enjoy a lot of the other stuff. I hear a lot of bands complain about having to be like content creators and photographers and videographers, and I'm like, yes, it is exhausting, but I feel like we've incurred a lot of skills in doing this. Like all of us can edit videos now. Like we all know how to use like proper video editing. I can like shoot a video with a real camera. Like, you know, I'd learned photography previously, but you know, all of these things are valuable skills that you could always use moving forward into like a different field, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's stuff that I think sometimes, whether we're thinking about more the music side or whatever angle you come at it from, creative people tend to have kind of an eye for certain things. And, you know, I've been working with some people more on like a casual basis, just like trying to help out some friends with content stuff. And one of the guys really understands it, and he's like, oh yeah, we need to frame the shot this way. And a lot of the people don't. And it's not a knock on them. They've just never done it. They're like, they'll try to film something. You're like, no. I need to be in the center where you can see me, because if you just glaze over it real quick, you miss the whole concept, and they don't intuitively understand that. Again, that's not me trying to knock anybody. They probably are great at crunching numbers and stuff, which I'm not, but it is a skill that you have to develop and think about. And I'm like, no, you're backlit. I can't see you. Turn this way. Like things that, you know, I think you and I maybe just intuitively understand from doing this for years and years. Yes. And so it is a skill you develop, and it is, you know, maybe somewhat begrudgingly, because some people just want to play guitar, but I just don't think that's realistic this day and age, unfortunately.
No. And I also feel like I've heard a lot of people express to me maybe like an anxiety towards putting themselves out there, or feel silly making a video, or they feel like they're being narcissistic by, you know, talking about themselves online. And I get that, but I just have said to people, if you don't talk about your, no one else is going to. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, maybe if this was, I don't know, like the 90s when things were normal and people got record labels gave advances and they had budgets to work with, and there was a marketing budget, and there were, you know, mainstream, you know, situations that were helping get things seen or heard. It's, I mean, obviously a lot of luck is still involved, but I think it's almost like we live in a world now where the playing field is more level, where we all have almost an equal, not equal opportunity. It's definitely not equal opportunity, but we at least have platforms available to us where it is easier to get seen. Might not work, but if you're not talking about what you're doing, then no one is going to, especially with all the noise and the traffic now on social media. Like, if you want your stuff to be, you know, consumed, you have to make it available for consumption. So
It was so hard for me for years, and now I've done it so much it feels silly, but it was really hard for me for years to put myself on camera. It was
For
really, and I felt just like, no, I don't need it. Nobody cares about me. They care about the guitar. Just show that. And that is sort of true, but it also, it didn't really make any sense because I was always totally comfortable doing the audio podcast. Like, that was fine. That didn't bother me at all. But I did not like looking into the camera. I did not like doing any of that. And now I've done it so much, it doesn't, it's just second nature. I'm like, why did I don't even understand. I get it logically, but like emotionally, that part of me is gone. Like, I've done it so much, it bothers me absolutely zero. I'll intentionally post bad angles sometimes because I think it's funny. Whereas, like, back in the day, I would never have done that.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
like,
We have a Patreon now, and I, like, on the Patreon, I'm just like, well, this is me, and I don't really care what I look like right now.
right?
Yeah.
Well, we are getting close to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on and having this chat. I really, really enjoyed getting the story and hearing all this. I have two classic questions that I wrap up every episode with before we slide over to my Patreon.
Okay.
But before I do that, I like to give the guests a chance to take the stage. You're talking to a few thousand people right now. You know, you can shout out anybody you want to shout out. Say hello to your grandma. You can plug a restaurant. You can say whatever you want. The floor is yours right now.
You just want me to say something?
You can just shout out anything you want to say, like anything that you've been wanting to get off your chest or plug, or anything new come in, any tours or records.
We have our new record that just came out last week. It's called Easy as Pie. It's the Surfrajettes' second full-length LP. And so, yeah, I'd appreciate it if people could give that a listen or pick it up at the record store. And we'll be heading on tour very shortly. We're going to England next week. We have 5 shows in England. And then starting November 7th, we will be doing a tour in a large part of the U.S. I do not remember exactly where we're going, but I know it's west. It's on the west, Midwest to west. So if you want to check out our tour dates as well for the Surfrajettes, that would be great.
Sweet. And the links to the website and her social media and the Surfrajettes stuff will be down. There's so many places people listen and watch these things now. Wherever the words are, that's where the links are. Go where the words are on whatever platform you're listening / watching this on. So go there. All right. Final questions. First one. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Boss?
Mm-hmm.
Will I get in trouble if I say my tuner?
It's the most popular answer, to be honest. So I don't think I can get you in trouble for that.
Okay, it is my tuner, but I do like the blues driver because, like, I don't do like, you know, gain a lot, but I find like the blues driver makes the least offensive, like, you know, gainy tone that I can get.
Blues driver, I think, suffers from being called the blues driver because it is much more versatile than blues. You know, it can do a lot of things. It can get gnarly if you want it to. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great
Sure.
pedal. All right. Final question. What is your favorite kind of pizza?
It's so funny. I joke that we ate so much pizza in the early days of this band because we just were like, oh, rehearsal, let's get pizza, that I actually don't like pizza anymore. But I don't know. Lately, I've been eating it more. I like margarita. I actually don't. I have like a basic palate. I don't like spicy things. And I do like Hawaiian pizza. Sorry, everyone.
Oh, well, you're Canadian. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Ironically, yes, that is where.
Yes.
And I love like pizza with the drink Tahiti treat. Has anyone ever had or Tahitian treat? Depends on what brand. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do not even know what that is.
Where are you from? Where are you based out of?
Portland, Oregon.
Huh. Yeah, you might not have it there, but if you get the opportunity, it's called Tahitian. There's two versions, but I think you would be more apt to find Tahitian treat. And It's kind of like bright red. It looks like toxic waste in a can or a bottle, and it goes with pizza so well. And when I think about getting pizza, I think about going to, like, when I was a kid, going to this one local pizza joint and just getting like a pepperoni slice and getting Tahitian treat, and that is like such a core childhood memory.
I'm gonna have to look this up. I wonder if this is one of those things where I've just like banished it from my memory, because it seems like I would have
like
had a similar experience. Is it like Hawaiian punch?
It is, but it's pop. So it's sorry, I don't know, soda. I don't know what you call it where you are, but
we're in the Northwest, so like it's kind of both. It doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people I know that are outside of family, of course, that are from here. Everyone else I know moved here, so there's all kinds of varieties of what they call soda or pop.
Pop soda. It's out of control.
Yeah, it is. Everyone's from everywhere else. So, well, Shermy, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you. I'm excited to talk about some stuff that I think we have mutual interest in over on Patreon. So we'll hang this up and slide over there if that works for you.
Okay.
All right. All right, everybody. For Shermy, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you need more content, you can always go over to Patreon, where for $5 a month, you will get extra episodes blasted right to your ears every single week, including more bonus content with Shermy, where we go over our past as diesel mechanics. Yeah, we get into that. It's pretty good stuff, and it really helps out a lot, so if you could do that, it would mean the world. And of course, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And don't forget that this was an audio podcast first, and most of those episodes are available on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts, and there's like 400 and something episodes there. So there's an episode for you, I guarantee it. Thank you so much. Love you. Talk to you on the internet very, very soon.